It's the Security Weekly News, Take 2, episode 266. I'm Doug White, and it is the week of 8 January 2023. We've got CodeQL, Kinsing malware, Bitbuckets, Win7 is dead, God save the Win7, Spynote, Vall-E, Aaran Leyland, and more on the Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News.
How is your business staying one step ahead of cybercriminals? Secure your email applications, network, and data with Barracuda. Protect your business and go from zero to security in no time flat. Whether your team is working in one location or many, Barracuda has solutions that are easy to buy, deploy, and use. Learn how Barracuda can protect your business against ransomware, phishing, and other cyber attacks. Visit securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Barracuda, your journey secured. Welcome to the Security Weekly News. This week, GitHub has released a scanner which will review your repositories for vulnerabilities, which is kind of nice to think about. The engine is called CodeQL or CodeQL analysis, and so far, it just on GitHub, it apparently only supports Python, JavaScript, and Ruby on there, but GitHub said they were working to expand to support for more languages because the CodeQL engine actually supports all kinds of languages if you go look it up. It supports C++ and C# and Go and Java and Kotlin and TypeScript and amongst all these others. So basically it's a setting that you can turn on that they've enabled so that if you want your repositories to be automatically scanned for vulnerabilities in the given language. I don't know how effective it is. They didn't have any mention about does this really, I mean, it probably works. But GitHub rolled out support for scanning for exposed secrets like auth tokens and credentials last month to all public repositories. So you should already be using that, but you probably want to add this as well to ensure that you don't have vulnerability. And I think it scans across libraries and other links and so forth like that. There's instructions for how to set all this up on your repositories in the article. Kinsing malware is actively breaching Kubernetes clusters. So you don't get to say that every day. I think I've always, my whole life, when I was a little kid once, I wanted to say Kinsing malware is actively breaching Kubernetes clusters. It's like been a goal. It's a bucket list thing. But I love this job. But anyway, apparently the malware is exploiting weaknesses and has been exploiting weaknesses in container images and misconfigured outward-facing Kubernetes containers, but is now also targeting outward-facing PostgreSQL containers with all the other vectors that it has. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud Team said that this is not a new exploit, but there has been a big increase in attacks that are using this particular vector, and that attackers are actively looking for specific entry points to Kubernetes containers. If you aren't familiar with it, Kinsing malware is a Linux-based malware that has been used to target all sorts of containers, and then they use the environments for crypto mining, so a very common kind of thing. Kinsing has previously used Log4Shell, Atlassian Confluence, and other exploits to breach target environments. So they basically set it up and take advantage of whatever. Microsoft said they're currently focused on vulnerabilities in PHP Unit, LifeRay, Oracle WebLogic, and WordPress besides the PostgreSQL. One of the documented attacks that was listed there said that the attack started with a scan of IPs looking for port 7001, which is a default port for WebLogic. And if you don't know what WebLogic is, it's a Java EE app server that was purchased by Oracle in 2008. The recommendations in the article, and there were some mitigations there too, but they were all kind of like basic stuff you should be doing, said always use the latest available version of the images being deployed and ensure they're from official repositories. So, yeah, okay. But the big pathway they're using now is against PostgreSQL. So Postgre is a common database that is used on a lot of Linux platforms and as backends for various web apps and so forth. The Microsoft team said there was an uptick in focus on this particular type of server, and in particular, a misconfiguration of the PostgreSQL server. And this is an old misconfiguration. Basically, in Postgre, there's an authentication trust setting. And by default, it was always set to trust anyone who can connect to the server. So when you do the setup of Postgre, it actually asks you in the setup configuration, do you want to trust anyone who can connect to the server? And it sounds like you probably do, but the reality is you probably don't. There is a linked article on here that's from Sriram Venkatesh, who is from Big Binary, who had another article on how they were infected by Kinsing and how they managed to remove it, because it's apparently quite difficult to get rid of. So it's an interesting article to check out if you're using any of those resources. AWS, which is the cloud side of Amazon, announced a new policy, which is long needed, in my opinion. The policy is that they will now encrypt by default all new simple storage service buckets. And notice the word new is there, so don't panic. But all the new simple storage service buckets, which are often called S3s or bit buckets, S3 buckets have long provided an attack vector for exfiltration of their contents if you don't configure them correctly, and a lot of people don't. That's another one of those places where people set it to public, because when they set it to private, it has a lot of other settings they're going to need to do for people to be able to use it. So they just make it public, and then people go in there and basically exfiltrate everything in the bit bucket. So there was no encryption by default, which meant that anybody could actually exfiltrate it and then look at the contents. But now they will automatically apply server-side encryption, which is SSE S3, as a default, and that came out in 2011. So it did say, so before you get worried, if you have already encrypted your buckets with whatever, then they're not going to change that. They're not going to lift your encryption or do anything like that. So whatever encryption you chose will still be in place. There are some cautions in the article, and I would reiterate them. Ensure that you don't use the same encryption keys for your entire organization, because if one key gets compromised and it's the same key everywhere, then all of them will be compromised, which is the same reason you don't use passwords, right? So that's certainly a thing. And of course, obviously, you need to protect your encryption keys and make sure you have a mechanism to recover these, because once you encrypt this stuff, you're not going to be able to get it back, and neither is Amazon if it's already encrypted and you lose all your keys. So be sure you understand what you're doing as you start encrypting things. But it is a nice move forward for S3 buckets. Windows 7 extended security updates. That's that 3-year program that Microsoft has, so after stuff gets end of life, they will continue to provide security updates for about 3 years. So the extended security updates for Windows 7 and Windows 8 and 8.1 will all expire today, which means if you're using those operating systems and you're not an airport, the government, hospital infrastructure, I'm being cynical after seeing crashed Windows XP machines in airports in 2017. But what this means is that despite all the dire tolling of doom bells that you saw in all these headlines this week, you basically, it's just not going to be supported. So just like you can still run Windows XP, and I guess you could still run Windows 3.1 if you're really feeling lucky, but or I don't know why you would want to run Windows 3.1 or Windows XP, but people do. But it will no longer be supported, which means there will be no security updates, no technical fixes or anything else. So if you're in that, and you're in that world, you may want to seriously start considering a change. There were several articles that made it sound like you'd have to buy a new laptop. I saw their headers like, hardware may need to be replaced, which could be true. Because if you are running Windows 7, you may have to, and you want to upgrade to Windows 11, which is the current version. That may not work because there are a lot of hardware restrictions around some of this stuff. But basically, they're dropping support and extended support, so there will be no further fixes, no further security releases. And I do agree you need to do something, but it's not going to stop working. And when you see a crashed computer in an airport 10 years from now running Windows 7, you can laugh too, but it won't be supported. Currently, Windows 7 is running on 11% or so of machines worldwide, and Windows 8.1 is on about 2.59, which is an eerily specific stat. I saw that. I was like, wow, 2.59. Windows 8 is on less than 1% of devices. I don't think anybody adopted Windows 8 hardly. I don't even know. 8.1 came out as an update. So if there is a problem and you're running these things, well, they're not going to fix it. Windows 10 and 11 currently make up about 79% of all the desktops, and Microsoft is really pushing you to upgrade from these old OSs to Windows 11, which is Windows 11 is currently on only about 17% of all machines, mostly because when people went to upgrade from 10 to 11, which was a free update, a lot of hardware just would not support it. There's various reasons for that. But My opinion is that if you are going to go straight to Windows 11, you may need to check your hardware requirements carefully before you try to roll that out. Windows 7 users, if you didn't update to Windows 8.1 or 8, if you're a Windows 7 user, you can still opt to upgrade to Windows 10. And Windows 10 does run on a lot of older hardware, but Windows 10 support will end October of 2025. So if you are doing that, you're just sort of, bridging. Of course, it's always the case. I mean, that's still, 2 years out? So actually more than 2 years out. The Department of Homeland Security, which is called the DHS in the United States, has a group called the Science and Technology Directorate, which sounds really ominous. Anything called a directorate always sounds ominous to me. But along with CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, also in the United States, they're building a machine learning-based analytics environment which will help defend against rapidly evolving threats. It sounds pretty interesting. This is going to be a multi-cloud sandbox that will be a way to test analytics and technologies that rely on AI and machine learning techniques. They also plan to include an automated machine learning loop for exporting and tuning data. So this is quite interesting stuff. It's going to be called CAPM, and it is the CISA Advanced Analytics Platform for Machine Learning, and it had originally been called Scilab. And it's going to be evolved into a multi-cloud environment, and it's going to be expanded. Now, this is not available yet. But in a one-page description, which was all they released, they described it as, while initially supporting cyber missions, this environment will be flexible and extensible to support data sets, tools, and collaboration for other infrastructure security missions. And it will run on Windows XP. No, I'm kidding about that part. But it all sounds exciting, and it sounds pretty useful, but they did not release a timeline for its completion or when it might be available. So it seems like it's got really broad goals, really big goals, but there's not a lot of detail. So who knows, but it does sound pretty cool at this point. Threat Fabric reported that October saw a large increase in the use of Spynote malware. The specific name of the malware is SpyMax, and it can monitor, manage, and modify device resources and features, and it has remote access capabilities targeting Android devices, and specifically now, this version targeting banking applications. So this particular variant is called Spynote.c, and it basically, in the past, other versions of it have posed as gaming and productivity apps, but currently it is now impersonating financials like HSBC, Deutsche Bank, Kotak Bank, Berlinu Bank, and other apps like WhatsApp, Facebook, and Google Play. So all these are available components of this, pay-for-play piece of software. Threat Fabric said the variant was currently being sold it was previously being sold under the name Cypher Rat from August 2021 to October 2022. But in October, they put the source code for this product and quit selling it, and they just put the source code out on GitHub. So you can go download it. And with the release of the source code, of course, usage of the malware, it increased significantly. So Spynote.c can exfiltrate and use personally identifiable information from online banking customers, track SMS messages, calls, videos, and audio recordings, as well as grabbing two-factor codes and keystrokes. So very nasty. It can also exfiltrate your passwords from Facebook and Gmail. There's yet another one of those reasons to be careful with your passwords and never use the same one twice. But it can even update itself. So it's got automated updating and so forth. And it can also update other apps on your device without any user involvement or approval. So that means if it's running, it can jump in and it can actually update other things on your device. So be careful out there with what you download and make sure you're not getting typo squatting attacks or any of that kind of stuff, because very, very kind of scary stuff. I included this next story. You might want to use this story on your to put out guides for all your people, because I thought it was pretty well written. I thought it covered some pretty important topics, and it was accessible by average users. You and I all know that mobile devices are an indispensable part of your infrastructure and my infrastructure. They're an indispensable part of your response team, maybe. They may be a complete and total part of your emergency response approaches and so forth. And you probably rely on them very much for your response book and the contact list that goes with your response book. You have a response book, right, and a current contact list. You know who to call when everything comes crashing down. Well, with all these storms and so forth, who knows? I don't know what may happen next. Cybermen, Daleks, Romulans, Cardassians, not Kardashians, although that would be bad too, but Cardassians are not the same thing as Kardashians. Thank you very much. But if your power dies and you don't have any foreseeable future of power, so does your battery. And this could just be at home. We had a blizzard like 10 years ago, and our power was out for 7 days. So after a very little while, all of a sudden, all your mobile devices start to fail. They start to run out of power. And if you're relying on your mobile devices for alerts, warnings, or even just to stay in communication with your board or with your CEO or whatever, it may be a problem. Now, we have a generator, and I had another generator down at school, and my generator ran out of fuel after a couple of days because I had plenty of fuel, but I wasn't expecting to have to run the thing for 7 days. But I had one at school that was going to keep running. And, I was having to drive down to school and charge all our devices up so that we would still have them. But the more we rely on this, the more important it's going to become that you add this kind of thing to your response book as well. When you hit 20% power on your iPhones and then the light goes out, because that's when it's going to go out, right? It's not going to go out when you just finish charging your device. It's going to, when you're sitting there and you just finish watching that 4-hour movie, that's when the lights are going to go out. And you're going to, oh, great. Can you even find your way to work without your phone? I know you and I can, but how many people can't? Not to mention evacuations and such. And I know Larry built some kind of zombie apocalypse survival tank to drive to some secret Larry base that he hasn't told us a location of yet. Thanks, Larry. But many of us don't have that. So, I'm going to show up at Larry's secret survival base going, please let me in, protect me, save me, and teach me how to hunt food. Because Larry can do all that stuff. I cannot. Tyler also, they have lots of things. But so encourage your people to read this and maybe even have a charged battery pack, or maybe you maintain them at work to distribute to your people that are on your response team. Have a clear plan, test that plan, and, understand that, what are you going to do when the power goes out, and then make sure that your response people especially know what to do. Don't be watching videos when you're running out of juice on your phone and so forth. Turn off Wi-Fi, turn off cellular when you don't need it, and so forth. It's also not a bad idea to explore how to have people SOS if your power is really low, because there are features that may be available if you can't get a signal. I was able one time to send a 911 message when I did not have any bars. That was just outside of Big Springs, Colorado, and or Nebraska, Big Springs, Nebraska, and I was literally in the middle of nowhere. So all those things are pretty handy things to know and figure out. It's a good article. They had some good tips, and it's accessible by average users. Now, I don't always choose to wear white satin hot pants, but when I do, I want it to be with a true hero, and from really sunny, and he's really a hero, from sunny London, England, Aaran Leyland. Hi, Aaron.
Woo-hoo. Thank you, Dr. Doug. I'm not sure it's so sunny here as it's at 7:30 in the evening, although nobody ever understands half past. That's like 7:30 p.m. or some stuff. But anyway, great to be on the show for the first time this year. And thank you to Jason Wood for having important business today. So I get to grace the airwaves. So hello, viewers and listeners, and Happy New Year. So today's article, which I'm going to deep dive into, comes from Info Security, and it's titled, and we've all been hearing about this rather a lot recently, OpenAI's ChatGPT used to develop malicious tools. And as we know, or some of you will know, there's been a bit of chat about this on the other shows. So Info Security stated that cyber criminals have continued using OpenAI's ChatGPT to develop new malicious tools, including info stealers, multi-layer encryption tools, and dark place, it is a dark place, dark web marketplace scripts. And the news comes from Checkpoint Research, CPR, experts who published a new advisory about the findings last Friday. So, in the dark place, dark web, underground hacking forums, threat actors are creating info stealers, encryption tools, and facilitating fraud activity. Bad. So in particular, CPR discovered 3 cases, which we'll talk about briefly, with observations relating to using ChatGPT for nefarious, spit the teeth out today, purposes. Okay, the first one spotted in the dark web forum on December 29, 2022 relates to recreating malware strains and techniques described in research publications and write-ups about common malware. In actuality, while this individual could be a tech-oriented threat actor, these posts seem to be demonstrating to less technically capable cyber criminals how to utilize ChatGPT for malicious purposes, with real examples they can immediately use. So the second type of malicious activity observed by security researchers in December 22, seems a long time ago now, describes the creation of a multi-layered encryption tool in the Python programming language. More to that later. So this could mean that potential cyber criminals who have little to no development skills at all could leverage ChatGPT to develop malicious tools and become fully fledged cyber criminals with technical capabilities. Metasploit all over again. Anyway, finally, the team spotted a cyber criminal writing a tutorial on how to create dark web marketplace scripts using ChatGPT. So it says the marketplace main role in the underground illicit economy is to provide a platform for the automated trade of illegal or stolen goods like stolen accounts or payment cards, malware, or even drugs and ammunition, with all payments in cryptocurrencies, is how the advisory goes. So according to Sergey Skykilich, threat intelligence group manager at CPR, ChatGPT can be used for good to assist developers in writing code. Yes, this is true, but it can also be used for malicious purposes, as proven by the aforementioned cases. So although the tools that we analyze in this report are pretty basic, it says it's only a matter of time until more sophisticated threat actors enhance the way they use AI-based tools. So CPR will continue to investigate this. But the Checkpoint Data Group manager, Omar, predicts AI tools like ChatGPT will continue to fuel cyber attacks in 2023. I totally agree with him. And they go on to say about ChatGPT democratizing cyber crimes. And that all reminds me of many years ago when I was looking to join a cyber organization, government one. And I wrote a PowerPoint presentation with a title something along the lines of "The time for Terminator AI is nearly here and we are not ready." Rubbish title, probably a rubbish presentation, but I did get the job after all. Anyway, so it would not be worthwhile on a podcast on GPT unless I got the system to do most of the work, or if not all of the work. And I'm sure that's going to fall flat in its face. They say you shouldn't work with children, animals, and AI chatbots, but let me switch to the screen and let's give this a go. Let's do this live. Okay, screen sharing. And it tells me participants can see the screen. So on the screen here, what you can see for those listening, not viewing, is the user interface of OpenAI GPT sort of screen, which you can log on to. When I tried to log on to it earlier, it was busy. I think they've had an unbelievable explosion where last year, they were saying something about 1 million users already. I did a bit of research today, and it was saying over 2 million users. And actually, on my phone earlier, it came up that Microsoft reportedly plans to invest $10 billion in the AI chat tool, and that will value the company already at $29 billion. So, yeah, this is one of them. If you were able to buy some shares in, I'd highly recommend it. Although that is not financial advice. I recommend that I should do it, but mostly like my cryptocurrency, it all like just dives to the bottom of the sea. Okay, so what I've done here is I've typed in for the chat GPT to write technically detailed podcast on possible malicious uses of OpenAI's ChatGPT. And it immediately screams into action. Not immediately giving you all the information at once, but it scrolls along at sort of a speed where you could more or less read it. Oh, it says, welcome to this technical podcast on potential malicious uses of OpenAI's GPT, or generative pre-training transformer. In this podcast, we will explore some of the ways that GPT's powerful language generation capabilities can be misused, the potential impact they could have, and some ways to mitigate these risks. I must admit, earlier when I was trying to do this and I was asking it sort of questions where it would be more phrased that I was actually a malicious actor looking to write code, and it did give me a sort of warning a few times to say that we're a par for good and not for bad. So they in this particular one, as time goes on, and it's sort of getting harder and harder to do a white hat job when it thinks you're doing sort of black hat doings. But anyway, it said, first, it's important to understand the capabilities of GPT. GPT is a state-of-the-art language generation model that can generate human-like text with remarkable fluency and coherence. It is trained on a massive amount of text data and uses deep neural networks to generate context-aware text that is similar in style and content to a given text or prompt. What we did find, or what I did find, sort of listening to a few articles at the end of the year, it's not actually connected to the internet. They have captured sort of the data that goes into it. So the data is a year or two behind, so you're not going to be able to sort of write something on up-to-date popular culture or get it to write something up-to-date popular culture. But anyway, we go on. One of the most significant malicious uses of GPT is the ability to generate deep fake text. With GPT, it is possible to create realistic text that appears to be written by someone else, such as an individual or organization. This can be used to impersonate others and spread false or misleading information. For example, GPT could be used to generate fake quotes attributed to public figures, fake news articles, and social media posts with the purpose of spreading misinformation. And that's got Russia written all over it. So this could influence public opinion and manipulate political campaigns. Let's not harp back to leaders in the past in both the UK and the US, who there might have been, or definitely was, a bit of manipulation from state actors on political campaigns. So it goes on to say, and this is from the GPT, another potential malicious use of GPT is creating spam or phishing messages. GPT could be used to generate large amounts of spam messages that are difficult to detect as automated, and craft highly convincing phishing messages that could trick individuals into providing sensitive information, such as credit card numbers, login credentials, and personal information. And this could lead to identity theft and financial fraud. As we know, sort of all the Nigerian prince scams, we look back at it and we look at ways that we sort of work out whether or not this is a phishing email or not, sort of bad spelling and bad use of sort of grammar and language. Well, this sort of could sort of, well, this could and will make it easier to write sort of plain language spam messages that would just make it difficult to sort of the wheat from the chaff, or the spam from the not spam, the good stuff. Anyway, so it also says here, GPT can also be used in automatic social engineering attacks where a malicious party uses GPT-generated text to trick victims into revealing sensitive information or performing specific actions, and that could cause harm to individuals and organizations. I won't go through all of this, but it sort of just goes on to say that it can be really highly convincing, loads of benefits, and I'm sure we haven't even worked out yet sort of what all the benefits of this are. You know, we sort of hear kids doing their homework on it, and I even read an article earlier that somebody earning a nearly six-figure wage had managed to sort of do their whole job on it, automate their whole job. So that's the dream, really. We can all sit on the beach in Thailand, sipping Mai Tais while doing, while GPT does our job for us. So I did read earlier, I thought I tried to get it to write larger articles, but it seemed to chop me off a little bit. So I find that if you put generate more, it just starts sort of giving you some extra. So you can do that until, I don't know, maybe it recycles itself. I don't know if it will, but it goes on about chatbots and assistants, and this all goes about impersonating customer service representatives. And Dr. Doug told me earlier that there's a bit of software in the making where even after only hearing your voice for 3 seconds or something around that time, that it's able to recreate your voice convincingly to the ear, so that GPT can do the text and that can do your voice, and Mai Tais in Thailand for us all. But it goes on. There's a bit coming up here I can read. It says in conclusion, so that might be a good bit to read. GPT's powerful language generation capabilities can be used in a variety of malicious ways. To mitigate these risks, it's important to be aware of potential dangers and take steps to prevent malicious use of GPT. This includes developing systems to detect deepfake text and speech, adding a human review process for sensitive use cases, and increasing public awareness and education, and implementing regulatory controls and monitoring systems to detect any malicious intent. This actually, this is quite interesting, actually. If we do generate, if we can spell N's and M's, made it worse. Okay, if we do generate ways to mitigate, and let's see if this comes up. I haven't actually tried there today. Okay, then it comes straight up. Here are a few ways to mitigate the risks associated with the miscellaneous use of GPT. So that's quite interesting. I won't read it out and waste your time. You can do that yourself. But what I thought it would be nice to do, although I will have to wait till this stops, is we'll show ways that we can actually use this in the wild. So I did try earlier just typing in more or less, write me some malicious code for infecting a machine. And they put a barrier against that. I don't know if that actually worked on the first day when it came out. But just to show sort of ways that we can get around this, or ways in sort of if someone has this technology with a different data set, they'll be able to just knock out malicious code with a data set of old code and make life much easier. So what we've got here is, I'm just going to cut and paste some text across because it's sort of like old school teacher looking over your shoulder. I'm definitely not going to be able to type with the 5 million listeners and viewers that we have. Right, so in Python 3, write code for transferring files between computers over the internet using sockets and encryption. So any little sort of big, large script kiddie should be able to come up with that in their head. And let's see what chat GPT pushes out. Okay, here we go. So it's importing some libraries, import sockets, OS, systems, and we have sort of Fernet import there and import hashes. So this is importing libraries for the cryptographic side. And then we have a bit of code, and that sort of goes on about the server side, host imports and sockets. Even it really, really good at sort of commenting your code as well, because I can literally say here what it's doing live, if you can't see it, is it's wrote me the code to create a socket, waiting for wait for a connection, generate a key for encryption, sort of receive the file and decrypt it, open the file and send it to client, close the connection on the socket. And it tells you what's happening on the server side, the client side, and that goes on about creating a socket and generating a key used for encryption and decryption. So that's just on Python. And I thought sort of if we have file transfers, if we start thinking about some sort of ransomware type thing, and we will write a script in Rust to encrypt all files on my C drive. And I think we all admit that if you manage to do that on someone's computer, that would be really bad. So let's see what it comes up with. So here's an example in Rust that demonstrates how to encrypt all files on the C drive using crypto and walkdir crates. So pulling in some libraries, and I'm not actually much better on Python than I am on Rust, but much of a muchness. But as we can see here, if you're watching, it's writing me the code. And if you're not, it has sort of iterations through the code, and it sort of, as it checks if it's a file, and then it walks through the directory. We've got it coming up with some code here for encrypting file contents. And it says here AES, key size 256, and a password. And then we have some crypto buffers and block sizes and ciphers and encryption. And then it has some commented code here, write encrypted contents to file. So it's so pretty. It's like you can literally click on the top right-hand corner to copy the code. And after it just says this script uses walkdir create to recursively iterate through the files on the C drive. It opens a file, reads the contents of the file, and encrypts the content of the file using crypto create, and then rewrite the content of the file with encrypted code. And it gives you some sort of warnings here as well. It's literally so easy. We'll just try this on Python quickly and see what this brings up. And it just says here is an example script in Python 3 that demonstrates how to encrypt all the files on the C drive using PyCrypto and OS library. And we just have the very nicely sort of commented sort of code showing up here, and it's really easy. So if we think we now know how to connect sockets and pass files, it can write us some Python code, which is really nice. But also, we might want to make that an executable. So I think what we'll do when this code finishes sort of iterating out is we can just ask it how you make Python code into an executable. And that could be quite interesting. And let's see what comes out here. So it's just finishing off, and it's going on about an OS walk and sort of iterating through, recursively iterate, as it says again, opens a file, reads the contents, and encrypts it using these sort of crypto libraries that we've pulled into. Some really bad spelling going on here again. Okay, how to make a Python script an executable. And let's see what comes up here. Oh, it's still writing the last one. Let's hope that finishes soon. It reminds you here at the bottom that if you do decide to encrypt your C drive, that it's not going to pick and choose your docs file and stuff like that. It's literally going to include your system files, and it's going to give you a really, really bad day. Okay. How to make a Python script an executable. It says there's a few different ways, but there's py installer package, and this, as we've seen before, is literally just going to tell you about the command prompt and pip installer, py installer, and then py installer -- one file, the script name.py. And next thing you know, your sort of code that you put together without really knowing any code that's really, really well commented is on its way to making you some malicious code. Use it wisely, and all about the white hat. So if we could bottle Dr. Doug's big brain and slide that in the GPT, we will then have easily sorted out the duration limits to quantum computing, and maybe even find Murder Rick. Where are you, Murder Rick? And back to you in the studio, Dr. Doug with the big brain.
I think I'm going to be supplanted by ChatGPT shortly, because it was writing a lot better code than I could have written that fast. So
great code, right? And it's the commenting of the code that I used to work with a lot of coders, and I guess some of them just aren't very good at commenting their code. And when you go back and look at their code, there's no comments at all. But it's great at commenting the code.
I won several programming contests by my documentation. So I'm good at that. But in fact, the last one I ever won was a long time ago, but I won one because the person wrote a better piece of software, but he didn't document anything, and mine had very good documentation, and they said, yeah, this is better. So I won because documentation kind of like 20% of the points or something. So.
And that's why you have a PhD and I'm only halfway through a master's.
Pilot higher and deeper, of course. Thank you, Aaron. We appreciate that demo. That was awesome. And finally, as Aaron said, Microsoft announced last week that their new text-to-speech AI model, which is called Vall-E, can closely simulate a person's voice when given a 3-second audio sample. Vall-E can then synthesize audio of that person saying anything, and they can use the speaker's emotional tone. So that's pretty intense. Microsoft has examples on the site for this, but they have not provided the code because they were concerned about deception and such. So, I mean, yeah, I think that's a pretty good concern. My voice is my passport kind of thing, like from the movie Sneakers. Well, pretty soon we'll be able to send a simulation of ourselves to all of our meetings, or Aaron and I can send our own simulations while we drink Mai Tais in Thailand. And we can deny we ever said anything, right? It could have been AI, but anyway, and that's kind of already happening, I think. So that's the news. Thanks, Aaron, and I will see everybody on Friday. Yay!